Hey guy, tonight we are not going to command legions, or scheme in the Roman Senate, or witness the rise and fall of empires. No, tonight we are going to do something much, much slower. We're going to take a walk. A very, very long walk. We're going to travel back to a time when the famous road to Santiago de Compostela was little more than a whisper, a collection of muddy tracks and forgotten Roman paths winding through the deep, quiet forests of northern Spain. You're going to feel the sun on your neck, the dust in your throat, and the profound, unending silence of a world lit only by the stars and the moon. Forget traffic, forget deadlines, forget your overflowing inbox. Out here, there is only the rhythm of your own 2 feet on the earth. Now, it's only fair to give you a little reality check before you get too cozy. As a medieval pilgrim on this path, your chances of actually making it to the end and back home were, let's just say, not fantastic. Between the bandits, the wolves, the diseases, and the questionable medieval hospitality, you probably won't survive this. But from the safety of your bed, you'll get all of the atmosphere with none of the actual peril. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I always find it fascinating to see where these stories end up. V letter 1 EAD Y Nairn. Hey B letter 1 EAD Q U letter 1 EA1 T Lairn. H letter 1 EA1 Den X U letter 1 ED1. NG Cho M letter 1 EDD letter 1 EA3. O Vasi letter 1 E9 TH O letter 1 EA3. I my Diane Hay. Your world for now is one of damp green and deep silence. You are a hermit. Your name is Pelagius or Pelio, and you've chosen a life of isolation here in the dense, misty forests of Galicia, a quiet corner of the kingdom of Asturias in the early 9th century. Your days are a slow, repeating pattern of prayer, foraging for nuts and berries, and tending to a small, unruly garden. Your conversations are with God, the birds, and perhaps a passing badger who doesn't seem to listen any better than people did back in the village you left long ago. It's a simple life, a pious life. It is, by all accounts, a profoundly uneventful life, until it isn't. It begins subtly, not with a booming voice from the heavens or a burning bush, but with a light. Every night for several nights in a row, you notice it. Out across the valley, over a small, unremarkable hill called Libradon, a spot completely covered in thickets and forgotten ruins, you see a strange shower of lights in the sky. Like a silent, celestial firework display just for you. At first, you dismiss it. An old man's tired eyes, a trick of the marsh gas, a bit of undigested mushroom from supper, perhaps. You are a man of God, but you are also a practical man. You know the forest plays tricks, but the lights don't stop. Night after night they return, focused on that same spot. It's not frightening, it's strange. It's a quiet, persistent invitation, a puzzle laid out in the heavens. You try to ignore it, focusing on your prayers, but the thought of it hums in the back of your mind, a nagging curiosity that disrupts the perfect stillness of your hermitage. The local peasants, the few you see, have started whispering about it too. Strange music, they say, drifting from the hill on the wind. Historians still argue whether these events were a genuine celestial phenomenon, a local folktale that grew in the telling, or something else entirely. But for you, sitting at the mouth of your crude shelter, it feels undeniably real. Finally, your quiet curiosity boils over into action. This requires leaving your comfortable solitude and seeking authority, which is a trial in itself. You pack a small satchel with some stale bread and a flask of water and begin the walk to Iria Flavia, the seat of the local bishop. The journey takes you out of your familiar woods and onto roads you haven't traveled in years. When you finally get an audience with the bishop, a man named Theodomir, you tell your story. You speak of the lights, the music, the feeling of a divine calling. Theodomir is a cautious, educated man. He listens patiently, but his face gives little away. A hermit seeing visions is hardly breaking news. It's practically part of the job description. He probably thinks you've been eating those funny mushrooms again. He thanks you for your piety and essentially tells you not to call him, he'll call you. But your sincerity, or perhaps just the sheer weirdness of your story, plants a seed of doubt in his mind. He can't completely shake it. So after a few days, to your surprise, Bishop Theodomir arrives at your forest doorstep with a small group of attendants, ready to see this celestial light show for himself. You lead them to a clearing with a view of Mount Libradon as dusk settles. You wait. The forest grows dark and quiet around you. For a moment, you feel a surge of panic. What if nothing happens? What if it was all in your head? You'll be the crazy hermit of the woods forever. But then it begins. Faintly at first, then growing brighter. The shower of stars, the strange, ethereal luminescence, exactly as you described. The bishop and his men stand in stunned silence. There is no denying it now. This is a sign. The next day, Theodomir gives the order. A crew of workmen is assembled from the local villages, and under the bishop's watchful eye, they begin to clear the overgrown thicket from the hill. It's hard work. Brambles and thorns that have grown undisturbed for centuries are hacked away. As they clear the dense vegetation, something emerges. Stone. Cut stone. It's the foundation of a building, an ancient one. It's a small necropolis, a Roman cemetery left to crumble and be reclaimed by the forest. With a mix of reverence and excitement, they venture inside. The air is thick with the smell of dust and cold stone. And there, in the center of the small, subterranean mausoleum, is a tomb. It's surprisingly simple, but it is clearly the heart of this place, the reason for its existence. It is here that the story crystallizes into a mainstream historical fact that would change the Western world. Upon examining the tomb, Bishop Theodomir declares it to be the final resting place of none other than Saint James the Apostle, one of the 12 disciples of Christ, believed to have been martyred in Jerusalem centuries earlier. How did he get here? Legend said his followers had carried his body by boat to the shores of Galicia. And now, you, the humble hermit, have found him. This discovery, dated to around the year 813, is the foundational event, the patient zero of the Camino de Santiago. The name given to the site, Compostela, is a wonderfully quirky tidbit born from your vision. Many believe it comes from the Latin campus stelli, meaning field of the star, a direct tribute to the celestial lights you followed. You stand there blinking in the torchlight, your quiet life as a hermit shattered forever. The news will travel to the king and then to the rest of Christendom. Soon, a trickle of the faithful will come, then a stream, then a flood. They will build a church over this tomb, then a grander one, then a magnificent cathedral. But for now, it's just you, a bishop, and a forgotten tomb under a field of stars, standing at the silent beginning of a road that millions will one day walk. The news of your discovery doesn't exactly go viral. There is no celestial Wi-Fi, no apostle-spotting subreddit to post on. The information moves at the speed of a tired man on a sturdy but unenthusiastic mule. Bishop Theodomir, knowing the importance of what he has verified, dispatches a messenger to the capital of the kingdom, Oviedo. The journey is long and perilous, crossing mountains and forests where the authority of the king is more of a polite suggestion than a firm reality. For you, life at the tomb returns to a kind of quiet, but it's a different kind of quiet now. It's the quiet of anticipation. You're no longer just a hermit. You are the keeper of a secret that's about to change everything. You tidy the area around the Roman ruins, you pray at the tomb, and you wait. In Oviedo, King Alfonso II, known to history as Alfonso the Chaste, receives the news. You have to imagine his position. He is the ruler of a small, rugged Christian kingdom, clinging to the northern coast of the Iberian Peninsula, a kingdom defined by what it is not. It is not the vast, wealthy, and culturally sophisticated emirate of Cordoba to the south. His entire existence is one of resistance. He is a Christian king in a land now largely dominated by Islam. He needs symbols. He needs rallying points. He needs something to unify his people and give them a sense of destiny that goes beyond just not being conquered today. And then a messenger arrives, dusty and exhausted, with a truly incredible story about a hermit, some strange stars, and the long-lost tomb of St. James himself, found right in his backyard. Now a lesser king might have sent a letter of congratulations, maybe a small bag of gold to the bishop to build a little chapel, a sort of 9th century like and subscribe, but Alfonso is different. He understands the power of a good story, and he understands the power of being at the center of it. He declares that he will go and see it for himself. This is a monumental decision. The king is going to leave his court, his fortress, and the relative safety of his capital to trek for weeks across some of the most untamed land in his kingdom. It is a gesture of supreme piety. Historians still argue whether this was a purely devotional act or a masterstroke of political genius. By making this journey, Alfonso wasn't just honoring a saint, he was planting a flag. He was creating a national icon, a Christian pilgrimage site that could one day rival the great sites of Rome or Jerusalem, but one that was uniquely his. He was sanctifying his own kingdom and drawing a line in the sand, creating a spiritual center for the Christian Reconquista that would unfold over the next several centuries. You watch as the royal procession finally arrives, not at the tomb itself, but into the general region. It's less of a parade and more of a well-armed expeditionary force. There are soldiers in boiled leather and iron caps, their spears glinting in the pale sun. There are courtiers looking deeply uncomfortable to be so far from their civilized comforts. There are priests, their robes already muddy, clutching relics and prayer books. And at their center is the king. He is not traveling in a gilded carriage. There are no roads for that. He is on horseback, just like his men, enduring the same hardships. And the hardships are many. The path they take from Oviedo is the one we now call the Camino Primitivo, the primitive way. It's a fitting name. It is a brutal, beautiful, and punishing route that winds directly through the Cantabrian mountains. There are no charming little pilgrim hostels, no friendly cafes selling coffee and orange juice. There is only the trail, often vanishing into thick fog or becoming a quagmire of mud. They have to ford freezing rivers and climb steep, rocky passes. For you, this is just the landscape of your home. For the king and his court, it's an ordeal. It's a quirky historical tidbit that the very first Camino was by no means the easiest. It was, and still is, considered one of the most physically demanding of all the routes. Alfonso certainly didn't pick the beginner level. When the king finally arrives at your hill, the field of the star, he looks less like a monarch and more like a weary traveler. He dismounts, his face smudged with dirt, and approaches the site. Bishop Theodomir is there to greet him with all due ceremony, and you, Pelagius, are presented. The king looks at you, the simple hermit whose strange vision started it all. He doesn't see a crazy man from the woods. He sees an instrument of God's will. You lead him down into the stone necropolis. He stands before the tomb, his soldiers and priests crowded in the small space, torchlight flickering on their faces. He kneels and prays. The royal seal of approval has been stamped. This place is now real, but Alfonso does more than just pray. Before leaving, he gives his first great command for the new holy site. He orders a church to be built directly over the tomb. It's to be a simple but worthy structure of stone and mud, a beacon in the wilderness. This is the mainstream historical fact that builds upon your discovery. King Alfonso II, the first pilgrim, becomes the first patron, commissioning the original basilica. The sound of hammers and chisels soon replaces the whisper of the wind in the trees. The king's authority and his treasury has given the vision a permanent home. As you watch the first stones of the new church being laid, you can feel the world shifting under your feet. The king's journey did more than just confirm a discovery. It created a path. By walking it, he consecrated it. He turned a dangerous and wild journey into a holy endeavor. He has provided the two essential ingredients for a pilgrimage to flourish: a destination and a road to get there. The news of his journey will now travel far beyond the borders of his small kingdom, and the seed he has planted here, in this once forgotten field, will begin its slow, steady growth into a forest of faith that will cover Europe. The king has gone home, his duty done, his new holy site officially on the map. But a map is not the territory. After the royal entourage departs, a new kind of silence settles, but it's punctuated now by new sounds. The chip, chip, chip of masons dressing stone for the new church, the grunt of laborers hauling timber, and soon, another sound, the soft tread of solitary footsteps. The first pilgrims begin to arrive. They don't come in crowds or tour groups. There is no TripAdvisor app to guide them to the best-rated hermit-discovered tombs. They come as individuals or in small, solemn bands, drawn by the incredible story that is slowly echoing through the courts and monasteries of Christian Europe. You watch them come. They are a different breed from the royal procession. They are weathered nobles seeking to atone for a lifetime of politically motivated violence, or devout monks on a mission from their abbot, or perhaps just the religiously adventurous. They arrive at your holy hill exhausted, their clothes ragged, their faces etched with the hardship of their journey. And they all tell the same stories. Stories of getting hopelessly lost in the forests, of being stalked by wolves, of nearly drowning while trying to ford a fast-flowing river. They are grateful to have arrived, but they make it clear that the journey itself was a form of brutal penance. The destination is divine, but the path is a nightmare. A road to salvation shouldn't, they gently suggest, have such a high chance of leading to a damp, unmarked grave. It becomes clear that for this pilgrimage to be more than just a dangerous fad for the fanatically devout, something has to change. The path needs to be tamed. And so, you begin to witness the slow, deliberate birth of infrastructure. The first and most important nodes in this new network are the old, established monasteries that already dot the landscape. This becomes the crucial, mainstream fact of the Camino's early life. Without the monasteries, the pilgrimage would have died in its infancy. These fortified communities of faith were islands of security and order in a sea of wilderness. You see it happen. A monastery that for centuries has concerned itself only with prayer, agriculture, and copying manuscripts now finds strangers knocking at its gate. At first, it's a novelty, but soon the monks adapt. They set aside a room, then an entire building, for these weary travelers. You follow a pilgrim inside one of these havens. The welcome is solemn, not commercial. There is no front desk. A monk simply leads you to a large, common room with a stone floor strewn with fresh straw. You are given a bowl of thin, hot soup, probably just boiled vegetables and herbs from their garden, and a hunk of dark, heavy bread. It might be the most delicious meal you've ever tasted. This level of service would get a 1-star review today, but for a 9th century pilgrim, a dry floor and a hot meal is 5-star luxury. The monasteries become the essential backbone of the burgeoning route. Then there is the problem of the rivers. You watch as pilgrims camp for days on a riverbank, waiting for the dangerously swollen waters to subside. You see them attempt to build crude rafts or try to swim across, sometimes with tragic results. Then a new project begins. A local queen, perhaps, or a wealthy bishop decides that facilitating the journey for the faithful is a direct path to heavenly reward. Building a bridge becomes an act of piety, a physical prayer in stone and mortar. It's a wonderfully quirky tidbit of the medieval mind, that civil engineering could be a down payment on getting your soul out of purgatory. You watch for months, even years, as a stone bridge slowly arches its way over a treacherous river. The pace makes modern-day roadworks look like a Formula One pit stop, but when it's done, it's there forever. A permanent victory over the wildness of the landscape. As the decades pass, you see these two ideas, shelter and passage, begin to merge. New, smaller monasteries and purpose-built hospices, the ancestors of today's albergues, begin to spring up along the increasingly well-trodden way. They are often built near one of the new bridges or at a particularly difficult mountain pass. A logic begins to form. The route is no longer a random series of tracks. It's a line connecting these points of safety. And this is where a debate still occupies historians. Was this growth organic, a simple case of supply and demand where shelters were built because pilgrims were showing up? Or was it a more coordinated, top-down effort? Did kings and bishops deliberately fund and build this infrastructure along a chosen path to channel the flow of pilgrims and their prestige and money through specific, politically important regions? Watching it unfold, it feels like a bit of both. The path is being paved, not with asphalt or cobblestones, but with prayer. Each monastery offering a bed, each bridge sparing a life, each small hospice providing a fire is an act of faith made tangible. You are no longer just a hermit watching from a hill. You are the spirit of the path itself, feeling it transform. The journey is still incredibly hard. The food is still basic. The beds are still straw. The distances are still immense. But it is no longer impossible. A continuous chain of safety is being forged, link by slow, painstaking link. The wild trail is becoming a spiritual road. The years blur into decades, and the decades into centuries. The simple church of mud and stone that King Alfonso commissioned is gone, replaced by a grander Romanesque structure. The quiet, tentative footsteps of the first few pilgrims have become a constant, shuffling river of humanity. It is now the 12th century, the absolute golden age of the pilgrimage. The path you once watched being carved from the wilderness is now a veritable superhighway of faith, teeming with 1,000 different languages and stories. French knights, German burghers, Italian merchants, English peasants, they are all here, walking the same road, their reasons as varied as their homelands. The infrastructure of prayer you witnessed being built is now a well-oiled machine of hospices, monasteries, and towns whose entire economies are dedicated to serving the endless flow of travelers. You are one of them now, a pilgrim of the 12th century, about to embark on this life-altering journey. But you have an advantage, a tool of almost supernatural power that the first generations of pilgrims could only have dreamed of. You have a book, not just any book. In an age where a single volume can cost more than a small farm, any book is a treasure. This one is something new. It's called the Codex Calixtinus, and a portion of it, the fifth and most famous book, is nothing short of the world's first ever travel guide. It's the medieval Lonely Planet, a leather-bound guarantee that you will be, if not entirely safe, at least remarkably well-informed. You hold a copy, or perhaps a copy of a copy, its parchment pages thick and heavy in your hands, the ink still dark and rich. It feels like you're holding a secret. The book opens by laying out the main routes through France, describing the towns and cities where you can begin your journey, and how they all converge in the Pyrenees to form a single, mighty road across Spain. It gives you stages, breaking the immense 800-kilometer journey into manageable chunks. It tells you where you will find the most important holy relics along the way, the Holy Shroud in Cahors, the tomb of Saint Faith in Conques. It gives your chaotic, intimidating journey a structure, a narrative, but it's the practical, nitty-gritty details that make it so revolutionary. This is where the mainstream historical fact of the Codex as a pilgrim's guide truly comes to life. It reads like a seasoned traveler giving you the inside scoop. The author praises the lands of the Poitou region as fertile and full of all good things. He tells you which rivers have sweet, life-giving water, and which ones, like those in the Basque lands, are poisonous and will kill your horse if it drinks from them. This is not just spiritual guidance. This is a survival manual. Then you get to the warnings, and this is where the quirky, human, and often paranoid side of the guide shines. It reads like a litany of medieval tourist traps. You learn to watch out for the ferrymen on certain rivers who will try to charge you and your horse an exorbitant fee, and who might even capsize their rickety boat in feigned panic just to steal your belongings when you wash ashore. The guide gives a particularly scathing one-star review to the innkeepers in the town of Astorga, who it claims are greedy and dishonest. You can almost hear the author's voice, a frustrated traveler dictating his angry Yelp review to a scribe. Their fish is always rotten, and don't even get me started on the wine. And the guide is famously, brutally judgmental about the different peoples you'll encounter. It offers harsh, xenophobic caricatures of the Navarrese and the Basques, calling them shifty, violent, and barely Christian. You make a mental note to be on your guard when passing through their lands, a prejudice planted in your mind by this very book. It's a powerful reminder that while the road may be holy, the people on it are still very, very human. As you read, holding this authoritative guide, a new thought enters your mind, a question that historians still argue about to this day. Is this book what it claims to be? The honest account of a French pilgrim named Aymeric Picard, written to help his fellow travelers? Or is it a masterful, coordinated piece of propaganda? You notice that the guide relentlessly promotes one specific route, the French way, as the one true path. And it just so happens that this route passes by all the most powerful French-led monasteries of the Cluniac order and leads, of course, to Santiago de Compostela itself. Was the Codex Calixtinus a genuine grassroots guide, or was it a brilliant marketing campaign designed by the church authorities to channel the immense river of pilgrims, with all their donations and political influence, along a corridor that they controlled? You may never know the answer, but as you sit there, the book resting heavily in your lap, you don't care much about the political machinations. You care about the practical knowledge it gives you. It feels like a shield. You know which bridges to cross, which inns to avoid, which money changers to distrust. The fear of the unknown, the greatest fear for any traveler, has been lessened. You are about to walk into the wilderness, but thanks to this book, you are walking with your eyes wide open. You carefully close the cover, the journey ahead now mapped and demystified. The old world of silent, intuitive wandering is over. The age of the informed traveler has begun. You close the heavy cover of the Codex Calixtinus, the weight of its knowledge giving you a surge of confidence. The warnings and advice feel like a shield. You know the scams, you know the dangerous rivers, you know the good towns and the bad. You are an informed traveler, ready for anything. Then, you take your first actual steps onto the Camino, and you learn very quickly that reading about the wilderness is a very different thing from being eaten by it. The theoretical dangers of the parchment page soon become the very real dangers of the road. The first opponent you face is nature itself. As you make your way through the dense, dark forests of the Pyrenees, or the lonely, windswept plains of the Meseta, you feel your modern confidence shrink into a small, flickering candle flame. The world is huge, and you are very, very small. At night, huddled in a flimsy shelter, or if you're unlucky, in the open air, you hear it, a wolf howl. It's not a distant, romantic sound from a movie. It's a close, hungry sound that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The wolves are the unofficial welcoming committee to the mountains, and they are a constant, unnerving presence. You learn to keep your fire bright and to sleep in shifts if you are traveling in a group. You learn that a rustle in the undergrowth is never just the wind. And then there's the weather, a far more relentless foe than any beast. 1 minute you're walking under a pleasant sun, the next a freezing rain is soaking you to the bone, turning the path into a slick, muddy trench. Your woolen cloak, your only protection, becomes a heavy, sodden weight. There's no Gortier X, no weather app to warn you. A sudden fog can descend in the mountains, reducing your visibility to a few feet, completely disorienting you. To be lost in such conditions is often a death sentence. You trudge on, shivering, your prayers now less about lofty spiritual goals and more about the simple, desperate hope of finding a dry place to sleep before your strength gives out. When you finally stumble into a village, you face the second category of danger, your fellow man. Remember the Codex's warnings about greedy innkeepers. You find yourself standing before one of them. He looks you up and down, sizing you up, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The wine he serves you is sour and watered down. The stew has a suspicious-looking piece of gristle in it that you try not to think too much about. And the bed you paid for turns out to be a lice-infested straw mattress that you have to share with 3 other snoring, stinking strangers. It's a medieval Airbnb experience with no customer support and no way to leave a bad review, except, of course, for the one that made it into the Codex, a permanent stain on that innkeeper's reputation. But the most insidious human danger is not the overt cheat, it's the predator disguised as a friend. This is a quirky, cruel tidbit of life on the road, the rise of the false pilgrim. One afternoon, on a lonely stretch of path, you are joined by a man who looks just like you. He carries the pilgrim's staff, has the scallop shell sewn onto his hat, and speaks piously of his desire to reach Santiago. You are relieved to have a companion, someone to share the burdens of the road with. You walk together for a day, sharing your bread and your stories. Then, in a secluded part of the woods, his friendly demeanor vanishes. His staff, you realize too late, is a very effective cudgel. He is a robber who uses the uniform of faith as camouflage. He takes your coin pouch and melts back into the woods, leaving you with a bruised head and an even more bruised sense of trust. This, of course, is just the prelude to the main event, the bandits. This is the mainstream historical fact of the medieval Camino. They are an accepted, almost professional hazard. In the mountain passes or thick forests, natural choke points, they wait. As you make your way through a notorious stretch of woods near the Montes de Oca, a place the Codex specifically warned against, you feel it, a prickling on your neck. The sense of being watched, the ambush is swift and brutally efficient. They aren't interested in drawn-out villainy, it's a business transaction. They emerge from the trees, rough-looking men armed with clubs and knives. They relieve you of your money, your spare tunic, and the good boots you bought back in Burgos. They leave you with your life, because a dead pilgrim can't warn others of the danger, which perversely is bad for future business. Lying in the dirt, clutching your pilgrim's staff, you think about the stories. Historians still argue whether the constant tales of peril were exaggerated, a kind of marketing tool to make the pilgrimage seem more heroic, to make the arrival in Santiago a greater spiritual triumph after surviving a trial by fire. Were the dangers amplified by the church to justify the existence of their protected roots and institutions? At this moment, with the bandits' laughter still echoing in the trees, the academic debate seems utterly meaningless. The danger feels perfectly, painfully real. You have been tested and you have failed to protect your worldly goods, but you are alive. You slowly pick yourself up, your body aching, your stomach empty. You have lost everything but the simple tunic on your back and the scallop shell that marks you as a pilgrim. And so, with nothing left to lose, you continue to walk west. You are now a veteran of the road, but not in a good way. The robbery has left you destitute and deeply suspicious of every shadow, every friendly face. The joy and spiritual anticipation you started with have been scraped away, leaving behind the raw, gritty reality of survival. Every footstep is laced with fear. The rustle of leaves is a bandit. A distant shout is an ambush. The road is no longer a path to God. It's a gauntlet of human malice and indifference. You walk with your shoulders hunched, your eyes constantly scanning the tree line. This is no way to make a pilgrimage. It's a march fueled by paranoia. Then one day, you see something new. Something that doesn't fit into the familiar categories of peasant, priest, noble, or thief. You see two riders on a hilltop, silhouetted against the morning sky. They are mounted on powerful war horses, not the weary mules or plodding farm horses common on the road. They are armed, but they sit with a disciplined stillness that is entirely different from the nervous energy of a nobleman's retinue or the skulking posture of a bandit. As they ride closer, you see their uniform. Simple chainmail, and over it, a clean, plain white mantle emblazoned with a stark red cross. You have heard of these men. You are looking at the Knights Templar. They are the answer to a prayer you didn't even know how to articulate. They are warrior monks, a new and radical idea that has taken Christendom by storm. They are men who have taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but their sacred work is not done in a quiet scriptorium or a sun-drenched field. Their work is the sword. This is the mainstream historical fact that changed the Camino from a perilous gamble into a manageable risk. The kings of Spain, tired of their most prestigious road being known as a haven for thieves, granted the Templars and other orders huge tracts of land, castles, and villages along the French Way. Their explicit job to make the roads safe for pilgrims like you. They are the original sheriffs in town, and their presence changes everything. Their patrols become a common and welcome sight. You'll be walking along a notoriously dangerous stretch of forest, your hand gripping your staff tightly, when a pair of them will ride past with a silent, disciplined nod. The very sight of those white mantles is a deterrent. The bandits who prey on the weak and isolated want nothing to do with these professional, heavily armed soldiers of God. The roads, while not exactly safe, begin to feel policed. The dark woods feel a little less menacing. You start to unclench your jaw for the first time in weeks. One evening, you arrive at a town where the local church and hospice are run by the Templars. This is no simple parish church. It's a commandery, a fortress. The walls are thick stone, the gate is heavy timber, and the windows are narrow slits. It's a holy place, yes, but it's a defensible holy place. It's part monastery and part military barracks, a very pious and secure gated community. Inside, the atmosphere is one of quiet, disciplined order. You are given the standard pilgrim's meal of bread and soup, but you eat it in a hall where knights are quietly sharpening their swords or mending their leather harnesses. That night, you sleep on a straw pallet on the floor, but you sleep more soundly than you have in any bed, protected by the strongest walls and the deadliest warriors on the road. As you travel on, you notice that the Templars, while the most famous, are not the only ones in the protection business. You begin to see knights with a different emblem. Theirs is also a red cross, but it is more ornate, with a fleur-de-lis on the arms and a sharpened point at its base. It looks like a flower and a dagger at the same time. This is the Cruz Espada, the sword cross, the symbol of a quirky and powerful homegrown order, the Knights of St. James, the Order of Santiago. They were founded right here in Spain with the specific mission of protecting this very road. They had a slightly different vibe than the Templars. Their rules were a little less strict, even allowing their knights to marry, but their effectiveness was the same. The road now had competing brands of security guards, all working to keep you safe. You rest for a day at one of their fortified monasteries, watching the knights train in the courtyard, their swords ringing against their shields. And in the safety of their walls, you have time to ponder. What is their real mission here? Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of these military orders was truly pilgrim protection. Or was that just a convenient, pious justification for their presence? As you look around, you realize they aren't just protecting the road, they are occupying the territory. These fortresses are strategic garrisons on the frontier of the Great Reconquista, the centuries-long struggle to retake Spain from the Moorish kingdoms to the south. Was your safety just a happy side effect of a much larger, more violent geopolitical game? Whatever the grand strategy, the effect on your personal journey is undeniable. The raw, animal fear that has been your constant companion begins to fade. The warrior monks have imposed a new order on the chaos. You can walk for an entire day now without imagining an ambush around every bend. For the first time in a long time, you can lift your eyes from the dusty track at your feet and look at the beauty of the landscape around you. That night, in another simple pilgrim's hospice, you find that you can finally close both eyes when you sleep. With the arrival of the warrior monks, the road has fundamentally changed. The gnawing, constant fear of ambush has been replaced by a sense of guarded order. This newfound security does something remarkable to your state of mind. You are no longer just a survivor, a refugee fleeing from one patch of woods to the next. You can finally lift your head, breathe a little deeper, and start to feel like what you came here to be, a pilgrim. And as you look around at the river of travelers on the road with you, you begin to notice the details. There is a uniform, an unofficial kit of essential gear. It's time to stop looking like a victim and start looking like a proper pilgrim. First and most important is the staff, the bourdon. You acquire one in a town, a sturdy piece of wood, taller than you are, with a metal point at the bottom and a rounded knob at the top. It quickly becomes an extension of your body. It is your third leg on treacherous downhills, saving your knees and your balance. You use it to probe the depth of muddy puddles or the firmness of swampy ground before you step. It's an excellent tool for fending off the overly aggressive dogs that guard every farmhouse, and you imagine it would make a decent, if desperate, weapon against a badger with a bad attitude. It's your medieval multi-tool. Walking stick, probe, and defensive weapon all in one. At night, leaning it against the wall next to you, its familiar weight is a silent, comforting presence. Next are the items you carry. You don't have a backpack. You have a scribe, a small satchel made of leather or rough cloth, with a long strap you wear across your body. Its size is intentional. This is the opposite of a modern carry-on you try to cram your entire life into. The scribe is small, able to hold little more than a piece of bread, maybe a chunk of cheese, a flint for starting a fire, and if you're literate, a small prayer book. Its smallness is a lesson in faith, a constant reminder that you are meant to rely on God's providence and the charity you find along the way, not on your own material preparations. Tied to the strap of your scribe is a dried, hollowed-out gourd. It's your water bottle. It's light, it's surprisingly durable, and it makes a sloshing sound as you walk that becomes part of the rhythm of your journey. Your clothing is your shelter. You wear a heavy, coarse-spun woolen cloak, often with a short cape over the shoulders called an esclavina. It's hot and itchy during the day, but when the sun goes down or the cold mountain wind picks up, it is your shield. At night, it's your blanket. A wide-brimmed felt hat completes the ensemble, protecting you from the relentless sun of the Spanish plains and the equally relentless rain of Galicia. You look in your reflection in a puddle and see not the person who left home, but a traveler, a wanderer, your identity distilled down to these simple, functional items. But the final piece of gear is the most important. It is the symbol, the brand, the logo of the entire enterprise. It is the scallop shell, the vieira. This is the ultimate mainstream historical fact of the pilgrim's identity. Originally, the shell was something you acquired only at the very end of your journey, picked up from the beaches of Galicia after you had reached Santiago and prayed at the tomb. It was your proof, your souvenir, your medal of completion that you would wear on your journey home. But by your time, in the pilgrimage's golden age, the custom has changed. Pilgrims now wear it on the way to Santiago as a badge of honor, a sign that you belong to this traveling fraternity. And it's more than just a symbol. This is a wonderfully quirky tidbit of pilgrim life. The shell is also a tool. You untie it from your scribe. Its curved shape and ridged surface fit perfectly in your hand. It's the ideal size and shape to be used as a makeshift cup or bowl. You use it to scoop cool, clear water from a mountain spring. In a monastery hospice, a monk ladles a measure of hot soup or a handful of oats directly into your shell. It is your plate and your cup, a gift from the sea that serves a deeply practical purpose. It is a thing of beauty, a tool for survival, and a sign of your sacred quest, all in one. You sit by the side of the road, holding this shell, tracing its radiating lines with your thumb. The lines, you've been told, represent the various pilgrimage routes across Europe, all converging on a single point, Santiago. But you've also heard other stories, whispers of a time before the apostle, before the church. Historians still argue whether the scallop was chosen for its Christian symbolism, or if it was a far more ancient symbol co-opted by the church. Was it a pre-Christian emblem of the setting sun, or of the goddess Venus, who was born from such a shell? Was its power tied to the Finisterre, the end of the world which this road leads to? The church says it is the badge of St. James, but it feels older, its magic deeper. You tie the shell back onto your scrip, where it clacks softly as you get up. With the staff in your hand, the cloak on your back, and the shell at your side, you are now complete. You are wearing the uniform. You are no longer anonymous. You are a pilgrim, and every person you meet will know it at a glance. Now that you are properly equipped, a member of the club, you lift your eyes from your own 2 feet and truly see the road around you. The safety brought by the warrior monks and the infrastructure built by the faithful have had an effect you never could have anticipated. The trickle of pilgrims you first witnessed has become a flood. The path is no longer a path. It is a highway, a bustling, dusty, noisy artery pumping people from all across the known world into the heart of Spain. You find yourself lost in a crowd, a walking festival of faith that stretches from the Pyrenees to the horizon. This is the golden age, the absolute peak of the Camino's popularity. This is the mainstream historical fact that powers the entire enterprise. In your time, the 12th and 13th centuries, it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of people walk this road every single year. You are part of one of the great mass movements of human history. You came seeking solitude and prayer, but what you've found is the whole of Christendom compressed onto a single dirt track. It's like a medieval music festival, but with more solemn chanting and arguably worse personal hygiene. You spend a day just watching the faces, listening to the languages. A group of knights from France, their squires struggling with laden mules, sing a loud, boisterous song as they march. A solemn, single-file line of monks from a German monastery glides past. Their Latin chants a low hum that vibrates in your chest. You see a merchant from Genoa, his fine clothes now covered in dust, making loud, theatrical promises to St. James in exchange for a favorable trading season. A family from Flanders, a father and his 2 sons, walk in silence, their faces masks of grim, pious determination. You try to ask a man for a piece of his bread, but he just smiles and shrugs, speaking a tongue you've never heard, a dialect from some foggy English shire. You are a stranger among strangers, and yet you are all unified by the scallop shell on your bags and the westward direction of your feet. The sensory input is overwhelming. The air hums with the shuffling of thousands of feet, the creak of wooden cartwheels, the rhythmic clacking of staffs on the stony ground, and the constant, gentle percussion of scallop shells hitting leather scrips. The smell is a thick soup of wood smoke, roasting meat, unwashed bodies, incense from the town churches, and the sweet, cloying odor of cheap wine. As you approach a major city like Burgos or Leon, the road becomes a marketplace. Entrepreneurs, seeing the endless river of customers, have set up stalls. You can buy new boots, a sturdier water gourd, or a tin pilgrim's badge showing St. James on horseback. The sacred and the commercial have become hopelessly, wonderfully entangled. One evening, sharing a campfire with a man from Burgundy, You notice he seems remarkably unweary for someone who has walked 500 kilometers. He's tough and pragmatic and seems to view the journey as a job. This is where you encounter a quirky tidbit of the pilgrim economy. The man is a professional. He is a Romero, a hired pilgrim. He explains with a wry smile that his patron is a wealthy duke back home, a man too old and too fond of his comforts to make the journey himself, so he has outsourced his penance. This man is paid to walk the road, pray at the tomb, and endure the hardships all on the duke's behalf. His job is to carry another man's sins in his rucksack and bring back a scallop shell as a receipt, proof that the spiritual transaction has been completed. Seeing the sheer scale of the crowds and the commerce they bring, you start to see the towns along the way in a new light. You walk through the gates of a city and see the boom. The market is overflowing, the inns are all full, and there are 3 new churches being built. The pilgrim's purse is clearly good for business, but you also see the other side. You see resentment in the eyes of some locals as they are pushed aside by the foreign throng. You see a greater number of beggars, people displaced by the rapid, chaotic growth. You hear stories of new sicknesses sweeping through towns, brought in by travelers from distant lands. It makes you wonder, and it's a question historians still argue about today. Was this annual human tidal wave a net positive for the communities along the path? Did the economic benefits of feeding, housing, and selling trinkets to 250,000 pilgrims outweigh the immense strain on local resources, the social disruption, and the constant threat of imported disease? For the king and the bishops, it was a resounding success, a source of immense prestige and wealth. For the local blacksmith or farmer, the answer was likely much more complicated. But for you, walking in the middle of this great, shuffling river, the geopolitical and economic questions fade into the background. You are no longer on a solitary quest. You are part of a phenomenon. You are a single cell in a vast, crawling organism of faith. You are swept along by its momentum, your own footsteps lost in the sound of thousands. The lonely, silent path where a hermit once saw a star is now a roaring, pan-European superhighway, and you are happily, wonderfully lost in the traffic. You are now deep inside the belly of the beast, a single, anonymous face in the great river of humanity flowing west. You've gotten used to the crowds, the noise, the smells. You have your gear, you know the rhythms of the road. Now you start to look closer at the people shuffling alongside you. You start to wonder not just where they are from, but why they are here. You came for your own personal reasons, piety, a sense of adventure, a need for meaning. But as you talk to people at the campfire, as you share bread in the hospices, you realize that the scallop shell is a uniform that conceals a breathtaking variety of motivations. Not everyone is here for the good of their soul. You see the purely devout, of course. They are easy to spot. They are the old woman from a French village whose every step is a prayer, her lips moving silently, her eyes fixed on a point beyond the horizon. They are the young monk, his face a picture of serene focus, seeing the entire journey as a walking meditation. These are the people the songs and stories are written about. Then there are the desperate. You walk for a day behind a family carrying a small, sickly child. They don't speak much. Their journey is a heavy, fragile bubble of hope. They believe a miracle awaits them in Santiago, that the touch of a holy relic can do what no doctor could. Their faith is so raw and powerful it's almost painful to witness. But then you meet the others. One evening, you share your fire with a quiet, grim-faced man with a distinctive brand on his wrist. He's not hostile, just resigned. After a cup of wine, he tells you his story. He is not here by choice. He's a thief from Cologne, and his choice was either the gallows or this. A judge sentenced him to a judicial pilgrimage. Walk to Santiago, get a certificate of completion from the church authorities, and walk all the way back. This is the mainstream historical fact that reveals the underbelly of the pilgrimage. It wasn't just a holy endeavor. It was an arm of the medieval justice system. It was a form of exile, a way for a town to get rid of its undesirables for a year or two. It was community service, but with more mountains, more bandits, and a much, much longer commute. The next day, you encounter a different kind of personal quest, one of the many quirky and intense bargains that people make with God. You see a man walking in a strange, shuffling gait, and you notice he is dragging a heavy iron chain, a thick manacle locked around one ankle. He isn't a prisoner. A fellow pilgrim whispers the story. The man was a knight whose wife was deathly ill. He made a vow to God. If she survived, he would walk the entire Camino dragging chains. She lived. And so here he is, fulfilling his end of the divine contract with every clinking, painful step. You start noticing others like him, a woman walking with bare, bloody feet. A man who has taken a vow of silence, communicating only with hand gestures. The road is full of these personal, extreme acts of penance and gratitude. You also walk alongside people for whom the journey seems less like a penance and more like a performance. You fall in with a wealthy merchant from Bruges, traveling with his wife, 2 servants, and a mule laden with comfortable-looking baggage. He is loud about his piety, donating coins with a grand flourish at every church, but his journey seems remarkably free of hardship. He stays in the best private inns, eats the best food, and complains about the quality of the wine. It makes you wonder, and it's a question historians still argue about. For the wealthy and powerful, was the pilgrimage primarily an act of genuine faith, or was it an act of social convention? Was it something you did to enhance your reputation, to be seen as pious, to make political and commercial connections, and to have a grand, adventurous story to tell when you got back home? So you have the saint, the sinner, the sick, the socialite, and the man fulfilling a bizarre vow, all walking the same path. The road, you realize, does not judge. It accepts the branded criminal and the devout queen equally. It provides the same dust, the same sun, the same rain to all of them. The hospice door opens for the man seeking a miracle and the man exiled for his crimes. It is a perfect cross-section of humanity, with all its beautiful devotion and all its ugly desperation. You look at the man shuffling beside you. You don't know his story. Is he a devout soul praying for the world, or a murderer walking off his sentence? Is he here to find God or to escape the law? On the Camino, in this great, anonymous river of people, he is simply a pilgrim. And you walk on together, 2 of 100,000 sinners and saints, moving slowly but surely toward the setting sun. For more than a century, this great river of humanity flows. The complex, crowded, chaotic world of the Camino becomes a permanent feature of European life. Generations are born and die for whom the road to Santiago is a constant, a fact of life, a highway of faith, commerce, and penitence. The mix of sinners and saints, criminals and kings, continues their westward march, their combined footsteps wearing the path deep into the Spanish soil. The road feels eternal, an institution as solid as the great cathedrals that mark its way. Then, in the middle of the 14th century, a new kind of pilgrim arrives. It doesn't carry a staff or a scallop shell. It arrives on merchant ships from the east, an invisible passenger. It travels silently, carried by fleas on the backs of rats. It is a rumor before it is a reality, a whisper of a terrible pestilence in Genoa in Marseille. Then the whispers become screams. You are no longer a pilgrim in the crowd. You are the timeless spirit of the road itself, and you are about to witness the end of an era. You watch as the Black Death begins its relentless march across Europe. The very thing that made the Camino so vibrant, the constant movement of people across borders, now becomes its greatest vulnerability. The road becomes a super spreader event on a continental scale. The plague doesn't care if you are a prince or a pauper, a saint or a sinner. It travels with the devout and the dishonest alike. A pilgrim who feels fine in the morning can be dead by nightfall. but not before passing the sickness on to everyone who shared his bread or slept beside him in the crowded hospice. The danger is no longer a bandit with a knife, a threat you can see. It's an invisible monster that rides on the very air you breathe. And so, the river of humanity stops. It's not a gradual decline. It's as if a great dam has burst somewhere upstream. Within a few short years, the highway is empty. The mainstream historical fact of this era is the sheer, stunning silence. You drift along the path that once thronged with 250,000 people a year, and you see no one. The silence is louder than the cacophony it replaced. You pass by a familiar hospice, but its doors are barred, a crude cross painted on the wood. The town beyond has its gates sealed shut. The charity and openness of the Camino, the core of its ethos, evaporates overnight, replaced by a terrible, rational fear. A traveler is no longer a blessed pilgrim. They are a potential carrier of Armageddon. It's the ultimate, brutal form of social distancing. The world turns inward. The web of connections that sustain the road is severed. Why would a German town council allow one of its citizens to go on a pilgrimage when he might bring back a pestilence that could wipe out everyone? The bandits of the past seem like a minor inconvenience compared to this. The plague is the ultimate disruptive travel event, and the industry of the Camino collapses. Grass begins to grow in the middle of the most well-trodden paths. The roofs of abandoned inns begin to sag and fall in. The forest begins to reclaim the road. In the midst of this terrifying emptiness, you see a new and disturbing sight. It's a procession, one of the few groups of people still moving on the roads. They are gaunt figures in dark robes, their faces hidden by hoods. As they walk, they chant prayers for mercy and publicly whip their own backs with leather scourges, a rhythmic, wet thud echoing in the silent landscape. This is the quirky, dark tidbit of the age, the rise of the flagellants. They are religious extremists who believe the plague is God's direct punishment for the sins of mankind. Their answer is to purify the world through self-mortification, a desperate, violent act of public penance. Their eerie processions are a symptom of a world gripped by a horror it cannot comprehend. It's a grim irony to see people traveling in groups to pray for deliverance from a plague that is spread by the very act of traveling in groups. Years pass, and the first, most terrible wave of the plague recedes. But the world it leaves behind is a changed place. Europe has lost perhaps half of its population. The psychological scar is deep. The old, confident, outward-looking faith of the Golden Age has been shaken to its core. And historians still argue whether the Camino ever truly recovered from this blow. The sheer demographic collapse meant there were simply fewer people to make the journey, and the fear lingered for centuries, with smaller outbreaks of plague keeping travel a risky proposition. The joyful, crowded, confident superhighway was gone for good, replaced by a shadow of its former self. You stand on a hilltop, looking down a stretch of the French way that was once a river of color and noise. Now it is just a faint green line through the landscape. A single, abandoned scallop shell lies half buried in the mud, a relic of a lost world. The silence that has fallen is profound. It's not the peaceful, meditative silence the first hermit once knew. It is the heavy, haunted silence of absence, a world holding its breath, forever marked by the memory of the dead. The great silence that fell upon the road after the plague is a silence of trauma and fear. The population of Europe slowly begins to recover, but the Camino never regains its swagger, its joyful, chaotic momentum. The journey is now tinged with the memory of death, but the age of faith, though wounded, persists. People still walk, they still seek miracles, they still come to atone. The road is a ghost of its former self, but it is not yet dead. It will take a new kind of attack, not on the body, but on the very soul of the pilgrimage, to bring it to its knees. You witness this new assault as it begins to bubble up from the north in the 16th century. You hear travelers and merchants speaking of a rebellious German monk, Martin Luther, and his fiery arguments. His words, copied on the new printing presses, spread like wildfire. And his message is a direct, frontal attack on the entire operating system of the Camino. This is the mainstream historical fact that cripples the road, the Protestant Reformation. Luther and the other reformers argue that salvation comes from faith alone, not from works like arduous pilgrimages. They preach that praying to saints is a form of idolatry, and that the veneration of holy relics is a superstitious fraud, a way for a corrupt church to sell gullible people false hope. Suddenly, the journey is not just difficult. For half of Europe, it becomes a sin. It's the ultimate bad review. The pilgrimage is rebranded as a worthless, even dangerous spiritual deception. You see the consequences almost immediately. The flow of pilgrims from Germany, from the Netherlands, from England and Scandinavia dries up completely. The German inns along the way, once bustling, fall silent. The Nordic faces, once a common sight, vanish. The road, once a pan-European enterprise, now shrinks, its reach confined to the staunchly Catholic kingdoms of Spain, France, and Italy. The attack is not just intellectual. It becomes physical. In the late 1500s, a new fear grips Santiago. Sir Francis Drake, the great English pirate and Protestant hero, is raiding the Spanish coast. The Archbishop of Santiago is gripped by a terrifying thought. What if Drake's heretic army marches inland to destroy the sacred relics of St. James himself? He makes a desperate decision. This is a wonderfully quirky and almost unbelievable tidbit in the road's long history. The Archbishop has the saints' holy bones removed from their silver casket under the high altar and secretly reburied somewhere else within the cathedral complex for safekeeping. The plan works perfectly. Drake is repelled and the relics are safe. In fact, they are so safe, so secretly hidden, that after the Archbishop dies, no one can remember exactly where he put them. For nearly 300 years, from 1589 until 1879, pilgrims who manage to make it to Santiago are unknowingly praying at an empty tomb. As the centuries roll on, the attack evolves. After the fire of the Reformation comes the cool, dismissive gaze of the Enlightenment. Now, the road faces a threat from the philosophers and scientists of the 17th and 18th centuries. They don't attack the pilgrimage for being bad religion, they attack it for being irrational. In an age that values reason, logic, and empirical evidence, the idea of walking 1,000 kilometers because a hermit saw some lights in the sky seems, well, silly. Miracles, a saint's bones curing the sick, to the new modern European mind, this is folklore, superstition, a relic of a dark and credulous past. The journey becomes not just sinful for some, but deeply unfashionable for the influential. It's something your ignorant, peasant ancestors did. The road is now caught in a two-front war, and historians still argue which assault was more devastating. Was it the direct theological attack of the Reformation, which declared the journey a sin and spiritually worthless? Or was it the slow, creeping, cultural shift of the Enlightenment, which redefined it as an embarrassing and foolish superstition, which is a more powerful deterrent, being told your quest is damned, or being told it's just dumb? Whatever the cause, the effect is catastrophic. The Camino fades into irrelevance. The great hospices, their international funding gone, are closed and fall into ruin. The military orders like the Templars are long gone, dissolved for other reasons. The path itself becomes fragmented, reverting to local tracks used by farmers to move their sheep. The memory of the road as a great European highway fades from all but the most local of consciousness. An old stone bridge, once built as an act of piety to serve 100,000 pilgrims a year, now serves a handful of villagers. You stand on the road in the late 18th century. The silence is back, but it's a different kind. It is not the heavy, fearful silence of the plague. It is the thin, empty silence of being forgotten. A shepherd, resting in the shade of a ruined hospice, watches his flock graze on the overgrown path, entirely unaware that he is sitting on what was once the most important road in Christendom. The pilgrimage is not just unpopular, it has become unimaginable. The 19th century dawns, and the road you have watched for a millennium reaches its lowest point. The intellectual revolutions of the Reformation and Enlightenment have done their work, convincing most of Europe that the pilgrimage is both sinful and stupid. Then comes the physical devastation of the Napoleonic Wars, which rage across Spain, turning old churches into barracks and ancient bridges into strategic targets. The few hardy souls who might have still attempted the journey now find it impossible. This is the absolute nadir, the mainstream historical fact of the road's near-death experience. Records from this time show that in some years, fewer than 50 people made the journey from beyond the Pyrenees. The great European superhighway now has less traffic than a quiet country lane. You decide to walk it again, to see what has become of your path. The journey is one of archaeology. The French way no longer exists as a single, continuous entity. It's a phantom, a collection of disconnected farm tracks, goat paths, and forgotten lanes. You have to push your way through thorny thickets that have grown over the trail. You see an ancient stone-way marker, once a welcome site for a weary pilgrim, now pulled up and used as a fence post for a pigsty. The physical road is being disassembled, repurposed by people who have no idea what it once was. You come to one of the great Romanesque bridges, a masterpiece of medieval engineering that took a generation to build, commissioned by a queen to save the souls of pilgrims. Now its sole user is a single farmer who trudges across it twice a day to move his 3 goats from one meager pasture to another. It's a grotesquely over-engineered solution for a very minor traffic problem. You pass by what was once a grand hospice, a building that sheltered thousands of pilgrims during the Golden Age. Now, its stone arches echo with the lowing of cattle. It has been turned into a barn. The locals found a new use for the sturdy old building, a repurposing as practical as it is poignant, like turning a grand old concert hall into a self-storage facility. In the villages, the memory of the great pilgrimage has faded into the realm of folklore. You sit in a tavern, listening to the old men tell stories. They know the path as the old road, and they say it's haunted. They tell tales of seeing ghostly processions on moonless nights, the shades of ancient travelers. They don't know the history, the sheer scale of what happened here. For them, the Camino is just a local ghost story, a bit of spooky color for their quiet lives. It's as if a whole civilization has been forgotten, its grandest achievement now just a whisper around the fireplace. You ask them about St. James, the man at the end of this road. Their description is startling. They don't speak of the gentle apostle, the brother of John, the fisherman from Galilee. They don't even speak of him as a pilgrim. The quirky tidbit you discover is that in the local imagination, St. James has undergone a strange and violent transformation. They tell you stories of Santiago Matamoros, St. James the Moorslayer. They describe a terrifying warrior saint on a white charger, his sword raised, appearing in the sky to lead Christian armies to victory against their Muslim foes during the Reconquista. This is the version of the saint that has survived, not a peaceful martyr, but a fierce nationalist god of war. As you walk on, however, you see that the memory is not entirely gone. It's just sleeping, latent in the landscape itself. You pass through a town called Hospital de Orbigo, its very name a fossilized memory of the grand pilgrim hospital that once stood there. You see how the main street of every village is still aligned with the old path. The road shaped this world, even if the inhabitants have forgotten why. And this is a question historians still argue about. Did the memory of the Camino ever truly die, or was it merely dormant? Was it a lost cause, or was its story embedded so deeply in the stones, the folklore, and the place names that it could one day be reawakened? For now, it seems utterly lost. You stand on a high, windswept plateau, looking out over the vast, empty plains. You can just make out the faint, ghostly trace of the old road snaking its way towards the horizon. There is no one on it. The silence is total. It's not the fearful silence of the plague or the contemptuous silence of the Enlightenment. It's the deep, peaceful, and final silence of a story that has ended. The great pilgrimage is over. It has dissolved back into the landscape, its purpose forgotten, its voice extinguished. It is, at last, completely lost to time. For the better part of a century, the road sleeps. It is a deep, dreamless slumber of irrelevance. The great bridges serve goat herds, the hospices shelter livestock, and the path itself is a half-remembered ghost story. The silence seems permanent, the final state of a world that has moved on. But as the 19th century enters its final decades, you, the timeless spirit of the road, begin to notice a new kind of visitor. They don't carry a staff or a scallop shell. They carry notebooks, pencils, and measuring tapes. They are a new kind of pilgrim, and their god is history, the mainstream historical fact that signals the beginning of the end of the long silence is a shift in the European mind. After the cool rationalism of the Enlightenment, the pendulum of culture swings back. The Romantic movement has swept across the continent, bringing with it a deep fascination with the Middle Ages. The past is no longer seen as a dark and superstitious age to be scorned, but as a source of mystery, heroism, and authentic, raw emotion. And you, the forgotten Camino, are a perfect 500-mile-long medieval relic waiting to be rediscovered. You watch them come, a French art historian, carefully sketching the intricate sculptures around the door of a forgotten Romanesque church, a German philologist, painstakingly tracing the evolution of local dialects, finding the ghosts of French and German pilgrims in the words. A Spanish archaeologist, clearing the weeds from a fallen stone marker. They are academic explorers, mapping the ruins of a lost civilization. They spend weeks in dusty church archives, poring over old monastic records, piecing together the story that the locals have forgotten. They are the first people in centuries to see the road not as a collection of random tracks, but as a single, magnificent whole. They are resurrecting you on paper. Then, in 1879, comes the spark that ignites the whole process. It's a wonderfully quirky and perfectly timed accident. Inside the great cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, which for centuries has housed an empty tomb, workers are carrying out renovations. A laborer knocking down an old plaster wall behind the high altar feels his pickaxe break through into a hollow space. They bring torches and peer inside. There, covered in the dust of ages, is a small lead box. With trembling hands, the archbishop and his canons have the box removed and opened. Inside are the remains of 3 male skeletons. The news is electric. Could it be the lost bones? A commission is formed, made up not just of clergy, but of professors of medicine and history from the local university. They examine the remains, consult the archives, and after much scholarly deliberation, they issue their stunning conclusion. These are indeed the bones of St. James the Apostle and his 2 disciples, Athanasius and Theodore. The long-lost relics, hidden from Sir Francis Drake almost 300 years before, have been found. It's a divine lost and found department delivering the goods after a 290-year wait. Of course, the timing was remarkably convenient. Spain, at the end of the 19th century, was a country in crisis, struggling with political instability and the loss of its colonial empire. And historians still argue whether the discovery and its subsequent verification were a complete coincidence. Was it a genuine archaeological find, or was it a politically useful miracle? a way to resurrect a potent national symbol precisely when the nation needed a unifying story of its glorious past. The Pope Leo XIII certainly saw the value in it. In 1884, he issued a papal bull, Deus Omnipotens, officially verifying the authenticity of the relics and encouraging Catholics to once again make the pilgrimage. The rediscovery of the bones gives the academic interest a jolt of spiritual energy. The books the scholars write are no longer just dry academic treatises. They are stories of a grand, romantic quest with a real, tangible, and now officially verified destination. These books begin to circulate among the educated and adventurous classes of Europe. A few intrepid souls, the first proto-tourists, decide to see this lost world for themselves. They are not pilgrims in the old sense. They are English aristocrats, French artists, and German poets, inspired not by piety, but by a romantic desire to walk through history. They are like modern hipsters discovering an authentic, abandoned place right before it gets cool. You watch these new travelers. They are few and far between, but they are a sign. They walk the overgrown paths, their published guidebooks in hand, marveling at the art and the solitude. The silence of the road is broken, not by the chants of the faithful, but by the quiet scratching of a historian's pen and the excited chatter of an artist discovering a masterpiece covered in weeds. The long sleep is over. The road is not yet awake, but it is beginning to stir. The scholars and the poets have done their work. You have been rediscovered in books and romanticized in essays. The bones of your patron saint are back in their tomb, officially verified by the Pope himself. All the ingredients for a revival are there, but the road itself remains a connoisseur's hobby, a challenge for only the most dedicated historians and hardy adventurers. The path is still a half-forgotten puzzle, a phantom trail that vanishes into farmland and forest. To walk you is to be constantly, frustratingly lost. The intellectual fire has been lit, but there is no kindling to carry the flame. Then in the latter half of the 20th century, you witness the arrival of the man who will provide that spark. You see him not in a grand university library or a royal court, but in the tiny, windswept mountain village of O Cebrero, a key stop on the ancient path. He is the local parish priest, a man named Elias Valanya San Pedro, but he is more than just a village priest. He is one of those scholars you saw earlier, a man with a doctorate, whose thesis was, of course, on the history of the Camino. He knows your story, your art, and your importance with a fiery, academic passion. But unlike the others, his interest is not purely historical. He looks at the overgrown paths and the confused would-be pilgrims, and he understands the fundamental problem. All the history in the world means nothing if people can't actually walk the road. And so, he devises a plan. It's a plan of such breathtaking simplicity and audacity that it could only be born from a true visionary. He decides that he, one man, is going to mark the entire 800-kilometer French way. He needed a symbol, something universal, cheap, and easy to apply. He needed a brand. This is the mainstream historical fact that forms the bedrock of the modern Camino. In the early 1980s, Father Valanya begins his great work. You watch as he loads up his rickety Citroën 2CV, a car that looks like a tin snail, with buckets of paint and brushes. And the paint itself is a wonderfully quirky tidbit, a story of pure pragmatism. He didn't spend months researching the perfect color. He simply drove past a crew of highway workers painting yellow lines on the road, pulled over, and asked if he could have their leftover paint. They said yes, and so the iconic, spiritually significant color of the modern Camino was chosen for no other reason than that it was free. You follow him on his mission. It's a one-man guerrilla waymarking campaign. He drives the dusty, unpaved backroads of Spain, his little car rattling and bouncing. When he comes to a junction where the path is unclear, he gets out. He paints his symbol, a simple, stylized yellow arrow on a tree on the side of a barn, on a telephone pole, on a rock. It is a divine act of vandalism. You see the local villagers watching him, shaking their heads. They think he's a gentle madman, this priest from the mountains, decorating their landscape with cryptic yellow signs. The police, the Guardia Civil, stop him on occasion, suspicious of his strange activity. He calmly explains what he is doing, reclaiming the ancient road for the pilgrim. They look at this passionate priest, shrug, and let him carry on. For months, this is his life. Driving, consulting his old maps, and painting. Arrow by arrow, he stitches the fragmented path back together. He connects the dots, creating a continuous, unbroken line from the French border to the steps of the cathedral in Santiago. His simple yellow arrow was a stroke of genius. It is a universal language, understood by a German, a Japanese, a Korean, or a Brazilian walker equally. It requires no translation. In a pre-GPS world, it was the perfect low-tech navigational tool. It removed the single greatest barrier for the average person wanting to walk the road. Not the distance, not the cost, not the physical effort, but the paralyzing fear of getting hopelessly, dangerously lost. His work raises a question that historians and pilgrims still argue about today. Did Father Valanya single-handedly cause the modern revival of the Camino, or was he simply the right man with the right idea at the perfect time? The cultural desire for a different kind of travel, slower, more authentic, more meaningful, was already stirring in the world. Was he the creator of the wave, or the brilliant engineer who carved the perfect channel for a river that was already gathering force? Whatever the answer, the result of his passion is undeniable. When he is finished, the job is done. A clear, easy-to-follow line of bright yellow paint now runs across the whole of northern Spain. It's a testament to the power of a single, obsessed individual to change the world, or at least a very, very long part of it. The road, rediscovered by scholars and given back its heart with the finding of the bones, has now been made practical. It has been made possible again for ordinary people. The path is clear. The way is marked. All it needs now are the footsteps. Father Valanya's yellow arrows sit waiting, gleaming on old stone walls and weathered trees. They are a promise, an invitation. And you, the spirit of the road, watch as the first people begin to accept it. In the late 1980s, they come in a trickle. They are not the medieval penitents or the 19th century scholars. They are a new breed, modern seekers, armed with a renewed sense of curiosity, and for the first time in centuries, a clear, unambiguous path to follow. The trickle quickly becomes a stream, and then a river once again. This is the great mainstream fact of the modern revival. In 1987, the Council of Europe declares you the first European cultural itinerary. Then, in 1993, UNESCO designates you a World Heritage Site. The official seals of approval are stamped. Money flows in for restoration. The world's attention turns back to this forgotten corner of Spain, and the people come. By the turn of the 21st century, they are arriving in the hundreds of thousands every year from every nation on Earth. The road is a superhighway once more, and now you are one of them. You are no longer the spirit of the road, but a walker upon it. You stand at the beginning, but your gear is different. You carry a lightweight nylon backpack, not a leather scrip. You wear high-tech hiking boots, not rough-spun sandals. You obsess over things the medieval pilgrim never dreamed of, sawing the handle off your toothbrush to save 8 grams of weight. You carry a carbon fiber walking pole, not a heavy wooden staff. The concerns are the same: comfort, durability, lightness, but the solutions are a world away. You walk, and you fall in with the new crowd. The motivations, you discover, are as diverse as they ever were, but they have been modernized. You walk with a young woman from Canada who is trying to figure out her next career move. You share a meal with a man from Korea who is walking to honor his late father. You listen to a man from Ireland who is trying to quit smoking, hoping the physical ordeal will break his addiction. It's a walking therapy session, a mobile self-help seminar with incredibly beautiful scenery. In place of letters of passage, you carry a modern, quirky document, the credential, the pilgrim's passport. It is a simple, folded piece of cardboard, but it becomes your most treasured possession. In every town, in every church, in every albergue, even in some bars and cafes, you get it stamped. The collection of these cellos, these little ink stamps, becomes a joyful, addictive ritual. Some are simple text, others are elaborate, beautiful designs. By the end, your credential is not a document. It is a personal work of art, a colorful mosaic that tells the unique story of your passage. At night, you stay in a modern albergue, a pilgrim's hostel. The spirit is the same as the medieval hospice, but the amenities have improved. There are bunk beds, hot showers, and often a communal kitchen where you cook a meal with people you met only that afternoon. As you sit and talk, sharing wine and pasta, you ponder a question that historians and sociologists still argue about. Is this a true pilgrimage, or is it just a new and highly successful form of cultural tourism? Are you a pilgrim or a tourist on a very long, themed hike? The lines are blurry now. You are seeking something, yes, but you are also doing it with a degree of comfort and safety that your medieval counterparts would have considered unimaginable luxury. In the end, you decide the label doesn't matter. The walk is what matters. And then one day it's over. You walk up the final hill and see the spires of the cathedral. You enter the vast, ancient square, the Praza do Obradoiro. Other pilgrims are all around you, some collapsing in tears, some staring in silent awe, others laughing with giddy relief. You have done it. You have walked across a country. You have followed the path of millions. You are here. The dust and the silence and the prayer and the pain have all led to this single, triumphant moment. You have reached Santiago. And now your own long journey is over. The final footsteps have been taken, and the great cathedral square is quiet and empty in your mind. The sun has set on the fields of Galicia, and the dust of the ancient road has finally settled. The endless shuffle of feet has faded, leaving behind only a profound and welcome silence. You can let go of the weight of your pack. The sturdy walking staff can finally be set aside, and the path ahead now leads to a place of deep and gentle rest. All of the stories have been told, from the first hermit's vision of a single star, through the great golden age of 1,000 chattering voices, through the long, lonely quiet of being forgotten, and into the new dawn of yellow arrows and modern seekers. The road has carried them all, and now it can carry you gently, softly into your sleep. The way is clear. The night is peaceful. There is nothing left to do but drift and dream.